We're still in the beginning of 2025, and it's usually in the beginning of a new year that I tend to go back and play some of the older FPS games out there that I've been playing before. I recently made a video about Battlefield 4 and also kind of comparison between Battlefield 2042 and Delta Force being a newer game. If you're interested, you can check out those videos later. I therefore felt that it was a good time to check out how BF1 is doing in 2025. I believe the last time I played and made a video about Battlefield 1 was last summer. As most of you know by now, Battlefield 1 was released back in 2016, late August, and same year as Call of Duty Infinite Warfare was released. But this time around, it's set in World War I instead of a Modern Warfare scenario, and I do remember still some of the trailers that I was watching when Battlefield 1 was announced and also closer to release. They looked and sounded great, and up to this day, they most of the time actually represented what you can do in the game and how it actually looks when playing the game and feels. Can't say that's a feeling I get as often nowadays with some of the newer FPS games being presented and released. When I got back into the game now, I was once again reminded that Battlefield 1 is one of the best atmospheric shooters I've ever played. The combination of the visuals and also great combat and Battlefield audio makes many of these moments when pushing with your team in, for example, the game mode called Operations, a very immersive and adrenaline-pumped gameplay experience. Yes, the game art style in combination with the above mentioned makes the Battlefield 1 experience quite hard to beat. I have a hard time to find any other modern game, a title that was released within the last couple of years, that offers the same kind of feeling or an experience. But how is the game holding up when it comes to players in 2025? Since I do play on PC, I like to go into the Steam charts first and take a look. We can see that during the last 2 months there's been around 8k players on average, and with a peak around 17k players. That's not bad for a game that is about to become 9 years old at the end of August this year. Remember that this is only the Steam charts though. Since the game was released on both PC, PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, I also took a look into ActivePlayers.io to check out the live monthly statistics, which is the summary of the logged Battlefield 1 monthly active players. Here's this been a total of more than 940k players of monthly players on average, and when it comes to average daily players, it seems to be around 250k players playing Battlefield 1. As a matter of fact, Battlefield 1 has been holding up their numbers really well, with some fluctuations here and there, of course, when I compare the last 3-4 years. Since I've done similar videos about other games before here on my channel, I can honestly say that it's not that often I see such a stable trend over time as BF1 is presenting here. Usually it's a steeper kind of decline when it comes to player count when we're talking about games that has been around for such a long time, or sometimes even just a couple of years. Because since I did play Battlefield 2042 recently, I did check the Battlefield 2042 player count on Steam as well, and even though the game got a bit of a boost in November last year, it only has around 7k players on average according to Steam. And we're talking about a game that is a bit more than 4 years old. Again, Battlefield 1 has around 8k players on average, and Battlefield 4 that I covered recently has around 1.3k players on average. Battlefield 5 is on top here though, currently having around 10k players on average. Again, this is according to Steam and is more to be used as an indication, if you will, but even so, it clearly shows that a lot of people are still enjoying to play the older Battlefield games, and that's also the case when it comes to Battlefield 1. So what makes Battlefield 1 a good multiplayer experience then? Well, I have mentioned the visuals and the audio, creating an immersive experience altogether, but the gunplay is also something I do enjoy in the game. Both the feel and the sound of most weapons, and it feels satisfying when getting a kill. Sure, there's gameplay elements in a game such as Battlefield 1 that can be annoying, depending on who you're asking, and I do got a bit tired of the gas nades and sometimes the mortars in some of the matches, just to mention a few things. But usually with a good team, these things or features aren't breaking the experience of the match or the outcome either. Some guys have not been enjoying Battlefield 1 since they want main weapons which can be used in multiple classes. For me, it's actually the opposite around. I do like that there's distinct classes also when it comes to what weapons they can use, since it also acquires different playstyles, or to a certain extent at least. By saying this also, the game promotes teamwork above anything else. On top of all this, Battlefield 1 also offers more dynamic environment than before, and it also improved the melee combat. I also believe that alongside with positive reviews and quite regular updates and expansions, the player base grew and became a pretty vibrant community. So with a unique setting, this time around being a World War I Battlefield game, and an engaging narrative, BF1 has become a standout title in the series. We should definitely mention a campaign also that I found engaging and fun to play, since it was structured around war stories where each story was focusing on different characters and fronts of the war. But what about negatives, or what some people consider to be reasons that Battlefield 1 wasn't that great of a title after all? Well, lack of content is being mentioned by Battlefield standards when it comes to being a full-priced release. For example, less than half of weapons that Battlefield 4 had at launch. It was also a discussion around the fact that the full game was released alongside with a premium option and a DLC roadmap. So some players felt that it was unfair that they were treated differently. And this, according to the critics of Battlefield 1, screwed the player base over to a certain extent, splitting the player base, so the base game owners were quite limited at this point of time. Now this lesson though carried over to Battlefield 5, where DLC maps became free for all players, since DICE and EA realized the importance of not splitting the player base anymore. More people than me has been talking about the gas nades on the negative side of things in the game, but also the overall nade spam, which is often one of the reasons why you do die in Battlefield 1. Well, the gas masks, when it comes to countering the gas nade, was a fun and innovative thing at first, but it kind of got annoying over time. Weapon imbalances is also mentioned, which I, on the other hand, don't feel is anything unique, if you will, when it comes to Battlefield 1, since more or less every game will have these problems or issues more or less, depending also on who you're asking when it comes to players. But now, I'm asking you, what do you believe are the pros or cons for that sake in Battlefield 1? And maybe the reason or reasons why you choose to stop playing the game, or maybe why you decided to continue to play Battlefield 1, or even why you picked it up once more. A lot of questions, but please let me know in the comments. With that said, Battlefield 1 is still doing well for being such an old Battlefield game by now, since this is one of those games that proves that it would be hard to top and go above the experience of a game such as Battlefield 1. So no pressure, EA, DICE and the rest of the developers that are now in the making of the new upcoming Battlefield 6, but you will have to work hard in order to give us another great Battlefield title that will also stand the test of time in many ways. So, check out Battlefield 1 also in 2025, I believe it's worth it, and if you're playing on PC as I'm doing here, there's often opportunities to get the game for a pretty good price once in a while. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon again in another video. Cheers!
Let me patch your wounds.